How are you doing? I'm Tom, and today I want to talk about two words that every hunter, marksman, everybody that has a firearm should know and understand, and that's accuracy and precision. And real quick, before I get into that, just a little quick channel news. The last video, Mrs. River and I just happened to have been out, and I did a quick video on a local historic spot. Well, a lot of you really liked that video. But I got to thinking about it, and history, that's just not really related to what I'm trying to do here on a Simple Living channel. So I think we're going to do a separate channel just for local historical things. We haven't figured out what to call it yet, and that's just because a lot of you are interested in the history, but not really interested in specifics on firearms and hunting and that type stuff, and vice versa. So once we figure out what we're going to call it, I'll let y'all know, and we'll start doing a few little local history videos. But today, we're going to go get into some pretty deep stuff for shooting. And we're going to talk about accuracy and precision. Okay, there's two reasons every person that owns a firearm should know what those two words mean. The first one is just because knowing and understanding the difference between the two can really help you improve your shooting. The second reason is just pure pride. Every profession out there, engineering, quality, metrology, every profession that deals with those two words, they literally use shooting and targets as the textbook example. And I mean, if you open up their textbook, there's a picture of a target with bullet holes in it. All right, if they're going to use us as literally the textbook example, we should know what they mean, just out of pure pride, just so we can hold our head up and say, yeah, that's us shooters. Okay, so precision and accuracy. Precision is the size of your shot group. The smaller your shot group, the more precise your firearm is. Accuracy is where the center of the shot group is compared to the bullseye or your target. All right, so that's pretty simple there. And you can have a gun that's not precise but accurate. So you've got a large pattern, but the pattern's centered on the target. Perfect example of that's a shotgun. All right, well, we all know a shotgun's not precise, it's a scattergun. But it can be accurate. And turkey hunters, when y'all pattern your shotgun, that's what you're doing, is you're seeing how accurate it is. Your pattern's this big, so it's not precise, but as long as that pattern is centered on your target, it's accurate. The same way with a rifle. You can have a large shot group, but so your gun's not precise, but as long as it's centered on your target, your bullseye, your rifle's accurate. Same for a pistol. Okay, a lot of the problems we run into are mainly dealing with precision. And I say that because it's easy enough to adjust your scope or your sights for accuracy, to move where your pattern's hitting. The difficult part normally is getting a small pattern. All right, so we're going to dig deep into that because there's a lot you can learn just from looking at your patterns. And there's two things we need to talk about real quick before we get into that. The first one's natural variation. Okay, and that would be called a normal distribution in probability and statistics. Natural variation is something that just exists in so many things. Heights of people, all right? There's a natural deviation there, natural variation. Okay, well, same way with firearms. You've got natural variation. And the easiest way to recognize that in a shot group is you just see random shots on the paper. Perfect example. This is the first group I fired Saturday. Okay, and this was from a different rifle, but I've got 4 shots here, and they're just nice, evenly distributed around the target. That is a good sign that it's, just natural variation from the rifle. It's not a particularly great group. It's not bad. A little over 1.5 inches. And the accuracy was real well on this group. But the center of the bullseye is centered in the pattern. So this is great accuracy. Not bad on precision. For a hunting rifle, depending on how far you plan on shooting, this is great. All right. But the key thing here is the shot group. It's nice and random. All right. Then we've got what we call special causes. All right. Special causes are not part of the natural variation in something. And a perfect example of that is, let's say you're getting ready to squeeze off a shot. And about the time that trigger breaks, a mosquito lands on your nose. Breaks your concentration, you pull the shot. Okay, well, that's not part of the natural variation in your rifle. That's a special cause. And when we talk about throwing out fliers in our shot groups, that's what we're talking about, special causes. And I got a great example of that. All right, I've got 3 shots here that are 3/8 of an inch. All of a sudden, I've got a flyer. Okay, and I know what caused this. I've been working on my setup at my range. Me and my buddy both, we've been doing some work, and we've just been trying different things. Well, right now, my rest from my rifle and my bags, it's just everything's sitting up too high. And if you look at this clip right here, you can see that the rifle's sitting too far above my shoulder. All right, so I'm having to try to get up to get on top of the rifle because it's just too high. All right, well, I was trying something different at range, and anyway, I've got to make some more changes, but I was getting a lot of variation in my shots because of that. All right, well, this was just, clear indication that there was at least a possibility of, something happening here that just wasn't normal. And here, this is another great example of something happening that just doesn't look normal. Okay, notice my spread on the shot group here. It's almost completely horizontal. All right, so I've got 2 bullets touching each other here. Then all of a sudden, I've got one to the right, and all of a sudden, I've got one way to the left, horizontally, not very little vertical change, almost a straight line. All right. Well, straight lines generally do not occur in nature. Just from random chance, you could possibly get that in a shot group, and it be just a natural variation in the rifle, just, like I said, out of random chance. The same way for this one, where I've got the 3 shots almost touching each other, 3/8 of an inch on the group, and all of a sudden I've got one out here. Random chance could produce that. But odds are it didn't, and it's definitely something to be suspicious about. Well, the same way when you start seeing a lot of horizontal or a lot of vertical shifts, anything in a straight line, you need to be suspicious. You've probably got a special cause going on. All right. Same way here. We've got a 3-shot group. It's all the variations horizontally. Right here, now this is more of a natural distribution. It's more just random placement of the shots. You won't always get a great triangle with just normal distribution, but often you will. And you will rarely see straight lines in 4-shot groups or 3-shot groups with natural variation. And here's another great example of that. This was my first shot group, and all of these groups were with this rifle. I was playing musical scopes between rifles out there when we first arrived, and I'm not going to get into why, but all right, my first group right here, I fired 2 shots. Well, all of a sudden, my next 2 are high. And the first 2 are grouped together really close, the next 2 are grouped really close, but we've got a vertical change here. I'm almost certain the vertical change was because I just put the scope on and clamped it down. And on that second shot, I had a slight shift in the scope with it just settling in place after putting it on here. I'm certain that's where that vertical shift came from. All right, so that's something you need to be aware of, special causes and just your normal, natural variation. And what we're trying to do when we go to the range, and the reason we put it on bags and everything else, we're trying to take us out of the equation. So we're not wondering, okay, is that a bad group because of my shooting, or is it because of the rifle, or what's going on here? Well, bad shooting is the biggest special cause there is. And hey, I got the proof. All right, so we're trying to take us out of the equation. Then hopefully we start seeing the natural variation in the rifle. Okay, and once you can determine, okay, I've got natural variation here versus a special cause, then you can start figuring out what's going on. Not all special causes come from you, the shooter. For instance, if I were to place the rifle right here on my bag, fire a shot or 2 shots, and then rest the rifle on the barrel instead of on the stock, I'm probably going to get a significant change vertically just from resting it on the barrel versus the stock. It's going to change how the rifle shoots. And that's going to show up on the targets, and it's probably going to stand out as a special cause. Something changed here. Another great example, if your stock is touching the barrel, a lot of times as the barrel heats up and expands, it touching the stock will cause your shots to start stringing left or right if the stock's touching on the left or right side of the barrel. All right, so if you're shooting and all of a sudden you get a vertical line to the right where your shots are just going further and further right or further and further left, or even up for that matter, generally that's a sign, you've got something going on with something touching the barrel. Special cause. Well, we want to do everything we can to eliminate special causes. And that's why you really want to look at your shot groups and see if you can figure out, okay, is that just normal variation, or is there something weird going on? And in this particular rifle, this is an ongoing project here on the channel as part of the 2020 deer rifle setup project. I'm setting this up for 2020 deer season. I explained in a previous video that I've had this rifle for some time, but I had some problems with it not shooting great, and it took me a while to figure it out. I didn't have enough clearance between the stock and the barrel. So every time I carried this stock out to shoot it, every time I carried this rifle out to shoot it, I'd have 2 shots touching each other, first 2 shots, and then all of a sudden I'm all over the paper. 3rd and 4th, 5th shots, they're everywhere. Well, I didn't have enough pressure from the stock on the barrel to change my point of impact, but I had just enough there that all of a sudden it's just affecting the harmonics. So all of a sudden I've got fliers going everywhere. And the barrel was free floated, okay, and that was the confusing part that took me a while to figure out. I just didn't have enough clearance. Okay, well, just seeing that my first two shots are touching, all of a sudden I'm all over the place. I knew I had some kind of special cause going on. And it took me a while to figure it out. But you need to figure out those special causes, and if you've got strange things showing up in your patterns, you're going to have to figure that out. Okay, for natural variation in your rifle, some rifles just don't shoot great. All right, I haven't ran into that many that don't shoot really well or more than that well enough for deer hunting. All right, usually with the natural variation, there's several ways to improve that. Okay, if you really want a really great shooting rifle, one way is to bed the action to the stock, especially if you have a wooden stock. Okay, well, that reduces the natural variation. Your action is more consistent in where it sits in the stock. You reduce the natural variation in your shot groups. So you get smaller groups. Free floating a barrel generally helps. Although a lot of rifles out there back in the day, they would bed the entire stock down the barrel, and you could still get some outstanding groups. Okay, so a barrel does not have to be free floated. It's just generally easier to get it to shoot great if it is. A lot of rifles, wooden stocks that aren't bedded, have a pressure point on the end. And I've talked about that in the past. With those particular rifles, usually you're looking at around 1.5 inch shot groups. Nothing wrong with that for hunting. You're going to have a hard time getting below that if you've got an old stock with a pressure point on it. And a lot of new stocks are still that way. Another thing you can do to change the natural variation in your rifle is to try different bullet weights and different brands of ammo. And I talked about in a recent video choosing the right bullet weight. I talked about letting your rifle do that. Well, that's why, because you're going to get different shot groups with different weight bullets generally. Most rifles have bullet weights that they just love and some that they don't really care for. There's a few rifles that shoot them all great. I mean, there's exceptions to everything, but in general, finding the bullet weights your rifle likes is really going to help you reduce the natural variation from your rifle and your shot groups. But before you go trying different types of ammo, you need to make sure that you've eliminated any special causes of variation, or if you're in the process of trying different types of ammo, you need to be looking to make sure you're not getting special causes of variation. And the reason for that's this shot group right here. I was trying different loads at the range, mostly in this rifle. I can't tell you if this is a good load or not. I've got two bullets touching each other, but then all of a sudden I've got one way left and one way right. And I know these are from my shooting. So I know what the special cause is for this. I can't tell you what the rifle thought of that particular load. I have no idea. And the reason I bring that up, and this ties into accuracy, you want to make sure that when you're setting your scope or your sights, that you first shoot a group and that you move the center of the group to the bullseye. You don't want to fire one shot and move it to the bullseye. All right, and you can do that just to get on paper or something, I did that with this one just to get on paper, one shot. But to actually set your scope or your sights, you need at least a 3-shot group. And I prefer a 4-shot. You can get by with a 3, 4's better, 5's even better than that. but 4-shot seems about right. And you want the center of that group centered on your target, and you want that group to be the natural variation of the rifle. If you do that, you're going to get the greatest accuracy when you're out hunting. And if you're just moving based on one shot, you can actually create more problems and make your gun less accurate. This group here. All right. Any of these shots, if I moved it to the center based on any one of these shots, I'm going to be further off and less accurate than if I base it on the center of the group. All right. And this group, what if I adjusted my scope or my sights based on this shot right here? All right. Well, all the rest of my shots, they're going to be way out here. All right. So I've actually hurt my accuracy if I'd have based it on this one shot or this one shot. And I wouldn't know that I had a special cause going on here that was causing me problems if I'd only fired one shot. So that's why you want to use a group. Identify your special causes, eliminate them if at all possible, and base everything off the natural variation in the rifle. Then you can start working to reduce that if you want greater precision from your rifle. And one last thing I'd like to throw in there. If you've got a new rifle or new to you rifle or rifle that you're just carrying out to the range and you want to see how well it shoots, just remember how well it shoots is both the precision and the accuracy. And one thing you can do to really help yourself out as a hunter is decide before you go, what level of precision do you need for what you're planning to do with that rifle? If you're planning on shooting extreme long distances, you need a real high level of precision. All right, and we're talking, half m.o.a, that type of stuff, depending on how far out you're planning on shooting. All right, well, decide what you need before you ever even go to the range. Because there's no point in chasing precision for a hunting rifle if the rifle you have is more than capable of doing what you need. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And if you didn't, please give me a thumbs up. Any shooting channel you see, give it a thumbs up. It tells YouTube you like shooting videos. All right. And if you want to see any of the future videos with this rifle or anything else I happen to be doing that week, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified. I think that about covered it for accuracy and precision. God bless and have a good day.